All right, well, welcome once again to our online citizenship class. So it's hard to believe, but now we're into week number 5. So in this week's lesson, we're going to review the other 2 branches of government. So today we're going to look at the executive branch and the judicial branch. But first, we're going to try a little reading practice. Okay, so are we ready to practice a little reading this morning?
Yes, we're ready.
All right. Go ahead. That's good to hear, Elena. I don't know. Elaine said she just woke up, so maybe she still needs some coffee, right? Okay.
Not drink coffee.
Okay, well, whatever. All right. Well, guys, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show a sentence on the screen, and I'm going to ask different students to read it. So, for example, Elaine, would you like to read number 1 for us?
Okay. George Washington is the father of our country.
All right. Very good. All right, Elena, you got number 2.
Who lives in the White House?
Very good. All right, Elaine, you've got number 3.
Me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When is the Independence Day?
Very good. Shekna, are you there? Can you hear us, Shekna? Okay, maybe he can't hear me yet. All right. Elena, if you want to try number 4.
What is the largest state?
Very good. All right, Shekna, are you there?
Hey, hi, how you doing? Good morning.
How are you, Shekna?
I'm
Shekna,
good.
would you
How's your
like to?
day?
Fine,
You
we're
look
doing
like
fine.
different today.
I'm in a different place, yes.
Yeah.
Shekna, would you like to read number 5 for us?
How many senators are in Congress?
Very good. All right, Elaine, you've got number 6.
Where is the capital of the government?
Okay. All right, Elena, you want to read number 7?
Abraham Lincoln was the president of the United States.
Okay. All right, and Shekna, you've got number 8.
How many colors on the American flag?
All right, very good, everybody. So I just wanted to do this quick little activity. So I'm just going to mute microphones just for a moment. So again, remember that on the interview, you have to be able to read one sentence or question correctly. Now, everybody, as you can see here on the screen, I have used the words from the reading vocabulary list. So everybody, it sounds like we're doing a great job on this part of the test. Now, remember, you have 3 chances, right? 3 to get one sentence correct. So if you get it right on the first time, then you're finished. You don't have to read another sentence. So congratulations, everyone. You did a great job. Okay, now here comes the difficult test. All right, so everybody, Shekna, you'll need some paper and a pencil. Okay, so I don't know if you have paper and a pencil or a pen and a paper. But this next activity is going to be now some writing practice. Okay, now I have been giving you some websites, and you'll get another website today to help you continue practicing with your writing skills. Now remember, on the interview, you have to be able to write one sentence correctly. Remember, spelling is kind of important. We have to be able to spell the words close, right, to the spelling. And of course, you can, miss a few little words like the or to, but we want to try to get every word correct if we can. Okay. All right. So before we begin, one more time, so now since is here, you'll need some paper and a pencil or something to write with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read 6 sentences. Now remember, you will not see these sentences. You will write them on your paper. Okay. So everybody, there are going to be 6 sentences, okay, to write. And then we will check our answers at the end. Okay? All right, so does everybody have a pen, a pencil, paper? Do we have those things? Yes? Okay, good.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, thank you, Shekna. Yeah, so go ahead and get your paper, pen, and a pencil. Elena, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh, good. All right, so everybody is ready to go. Have you guys been practicing? Have we been practicing? Yes, maybe. Yeah, no one wants to tell me. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Good. Okay, good answer. All right. So, guys, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and you are just going to listen to me, and you will write the sentence on the paper. I will repeat each sentence 2 times, then I will say it 1 more time. Okay? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. All right, everybody. Let's get ready, and here we go. Okay, so here is number 1.
Second, please. 1 second.
Okay? Just tell me when you're ready, Shekna.
I don't think is okay. I'm ready right now.
Yes. Are you ready now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, let's begin. Okay, so here is number 1. Ready? Number 1. There are 100 senators in Congress. There are 100 senators.
I can say like number or letter.
Number's fine. In Congress. Okay, here is number 2. Lincoln was president during the Civil War. Lincoln was president during the Civil War. Okay.
7
All right.
words.
I'm just going to read the sentence. Don't worry, Shekna. I'll read it one more time. Okay. So just keep going, and then I'll come back and read them one more time. Okay. All right. Number 3. Delaware was the first state. Delaware was the first state. Okay. All right. Number 4. Alaska is the largest state. Alaska is the largest state. Okay. All right. Number 5. Freedom of speech is a right. Freedom of speech is a right. Okay, all right, here is the last one, number 6. Okay, number 6. Citizens pay taxes. Citizens pay taxes. Okay, I'm going to read them one more time. So again, number 1, there are 100 senators in Congress. Number 2, Lincoln was president during the Civil War. Number 3, Delaware was the first state. Number 4, Alaska is the largest state. Number 5, freedom of speech is a right. And finally, number 6, citizens pay taxes. Okay, now before we check our answers, please remember that during the interview, the interviewer might repeat the sentence 2 times, maybe 3. So remember, during the interview, you just have to listen and write. So you can't stop the person and say, what was the second word or the third word? So again, sometimes we don't know if the interviewer is going to repeat it 2 times or 3 times, okay? So just remember, you do have 3 chances to get the sentence correct. So again, let's see how we did. All right, I'm going to return to sharing the screen, and you guys can check your answers now. Okay, here we go. So I'll give you a moment. So look at the screen. Shekna, as you can see, you can use the number in number 1. So you can use 100, the number. And when you're ready, you can just put in the chat box that you're finished, you're ready. Okay, so I'll turn off my microphone just for a moment. All right, so everybody about finished? So Shekna, have you had a chance to check your answers?
I check my answer, but I try some of them correct. But some of them is
Well, remember, you just have to be close in the spelling.
Yes, is close. Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to be able to read it. Yeah. Were there any words that were difficult for anybody? Which words were difficult for anybody? Saba, what about you? Which words were difficult?
No, I'm good. I haven't any
No mistakes?
no
Okay.
mistakes. No, just
Really?
100. I made it um in the
Word.
letters. Not
Okay, that's fine. Sure. Okay. That's fine. You could use numbers or words. Elena said she had 3 mistakes. Elena, were they big mistakes?
Maybe big mistakes. Civil,
How did you
senators,
how did you spell civil?
civil, CIVOL.
Well, I could probably understand that. So I don't know. They might ask you to do it again, but still, I could at least read that. I could at least understand that. But that's why, Elena, you're going to have to practice some of those words. Okay. So, Elena, have you been
Okay.
practicing? Have you been practicing?
So
Hmm. Maybe not. Hmm.
you asked me.
What about you, Elaine?
I'm good, but just the first stage, I don't know how to spell.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, guys, it takes practice. Okay. There's no magic. Yeah. Saba, go ahead.
For me, I think that these letters are for me. They are mistakes because I didn't make P president a capital letter,
Well,
and
that's
I
okay.
forgot. Yeah, and Alaska, I didn't make a capital letter.
Yeah,
So,
usually capital they don't pay attention to the capital letters.
oh,
So
okay.
yeah, you'll be okay. Remember, they're looking for big mistakes. Now, Elena, I don't know if that's a big mistake, like with civil. I don't know. Again, it often might depend on the person, but a big mistake would be a word that you know, like for example, in number 5, if you forgot the word speech, you know, if you just said freedom of is a right, that would be a big mistake, right? Or for number 2, if we instead of Lincoln we put Washington, that would be a big mistake. So again, I think if you made some spelling mistakes, that's okay. It just has to be understandable. But I'm just going to tell everybody that's why you need to practice, okay? So again, I will send you some more practice that you can try at home. Okay? All right. Well, any other questions before we continue?
For me, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and continue. But guys, as you can see, writing, it takes practice. So if you just had a few mistakes, I think you're going to be okay. But it just, takes some time and practice. Okay, guys. Now, today we're going to continue with our lessons talking about the Constitution and especially the 3 branches of government. Now, last week we practiced with the legislative branch. Okay, everybody, say that with me. Legislative. Say that again. Legislative.
Legislative.
Very good. So remember, the legislative branch is Congress. Everyone, let's say that word, Congress.
Congress.
Yeah, so remember, Congress had 2 houses. You remember those 2 houses, those 2 parts of Congress? What were they?
House of Representatives.
And
Yeah.
Senate.
Very good. And the
Senate.
Senate. Very good. All right. Very good. Excellent. Okay. Now, this week, we're going to talk about the executive branch and the judicial branch. That's what we're going to be looking at here today. Now, of course, the executive branch is the presidency. So that's what we're going to be focusing on here this morning. And of course, as you know, this is a big year because we have a presidential election. Did anybody watch last night the vice president debate? The vice presidential debate? Did anybody watch that on TV?
No, I miss it.
No. Well,
I want to
I
sleep, but
watched. You could probably go on YouTube and watch
I
it.
think between Kamala and
Mike
me?
Pence, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about the president here in just a moment. But yes, the vice presidential debate was yesterday. And then, of course, the judicial branch is talking about the court system. And again, we'll practice those words here in just a moment. So, everyone, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the executive branch. All right, everyone, let's say that together. Ready? The executive branch.
The executive branch.
The executive branch.
Very good. So, of course, when we talk about the executive, we mean the president. So, let's go ahead and do a little discussion on the executive branch. Okay? So, again, you probably know a lot already because most students, especially in their countries, they probably follow a little bit of our government in the press. So, one thing though I want to just mention is that the president is in charge of the executive branch. Again, the president is at the top of that particular branch. Okay? And again, we'll talk about all of this information here in just a moment. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what the president's job is. Okay, and again, I'm going to ask some people to help me here. So, Elena, would you like to start and read a little bit here of the president's job? Can you read that for us, Elena?
Yes, I can read. The president has many responsibilities. The president is commander-in-chief of the military.
Very good.
The president can sign a bill into law. The president can veto a bill.
Everyone,
The
let's say this
president-
word. Let's say this word together. Everybody, let's try it. Veto.
Veto.
Everyone, try it. Veto.
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 Yeah, that we're going to discuss that word in just a moment. Okay. All right, Elena, please continue.
The president represents the United States to other countries. The president is in charge of the departments in the executive branch.
All right, very good. Thank you, Elena. Now, let's talk a little bit about a couple of things that we see here, because, again, these are going to lead to some questions that we're going to talk about. So, first off, let's talk about this one that I'm circling right now. Okay, everyone, let's say this one together. Commander-in-chief. Everyone, let's say that. Commander-in-chief.
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 Very good. Now, the commander-in-chief is the leader of the military. Now, when we say military, what does that mean? Who can tell us what the military is?
Military is
Army?
Army. That's right. That's one
Army.
part.
Oh, it's
What else, Shekhna?
Guard secretary.
Marine.
Uh-huh. Say it again, Saba. The
Yeah,
Marines.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Marines.
Guard, marine, armor.
That's right. That's right, Shekhna. The Navy.
Yeah, Navy.
Yeah. So basically, these branches are the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. The Air Forces are the planes, right? And the Marines. So in this case, guys, the president is the leader of all of those military parts. So we call him, one of his main responsibilities is to be the commander-in-chief, the leader of the military. Now, please understand, the president cannot go to war by himself. The president cannot say, let's go to war. The president has to have the agreement of Congress. So if you remember, last week we talked about the balance, right? The balance of powers, the separation of powers that the president and the Congress and all of them have. So this balance is important. So again, for example, the president cannot go to war, cannot say, let's go to war. The president has to talk to Congress first. But still, the president does direct the military when we are at war. So he is the commander-in-chief. Okay, so that's one of his main responsibilities. Another responsibility, of course, is to sign bills into law. So when the president signs a bill, when the Congress passes a bill and gives it to the president must sign it to make it a law. Now, if you remember last week, we also talked about that balance of power, right? Those balances that we're going to review, which we'll review more in the next couple of weeks. But the idea is that Congress cannot pass a law until the president signs it. Okay, when the president signs it, it becomes a law. But sometimes the president may not like the particular bill that the Congress has given him. So again, one of the powers of the presidency is what we call the veto. Everyone, you can just say that again, veto, right?
Veto.
So,
Yeah, so basically veto means to say no. So the president can veto a bill if he doesn't like it. Now, of course, Congress can basically, if they get enough votes, they can actually turn the veto over and they can still pass the law. So again, when we review that little triangle, remember that triangle that we had last week? You will see that, again, the president can veto a bill, but here in the United States, Congress can still pass the bill if they have enough votes. So remember, the president can sign a bill or the president can say no. But again, we still have these balances and these separations of power that make sure the president does not become too powerful or that Congress becomes too powerful. Okay, now another thing to remember is that the president is basically representing the United States to the other countries in the world. So sometimes you see, TV video of the president talking to other leaders in other countries. And then, of course, another important thing is that in the executive branch, there are many departments that the president is in charge of. Now, we're going to look at those departments in just a moment, okay? So once again, guys, here are many of the responsibilities that the president has. So I'm just going to review them very quickly. So once again, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military. The president can sign a bill into law. The president can say no. He can veto a bill. And the president also represents the United States to the rest of the world. The president can go and meet and talk to the other leaders. Now, I cannot go and talk to these other leaders, right? I'm just an English teacher. I'm not the president. So I can't just travel to another country and say, no, I'd like to speak to the prime minister of your country. Probably not. So in this case, that's a special responsibility that the president has. And then, of course, the president has many departments that he has to oversee. Okay? All right, let's move on to our next slide. And that's talking about the different departments that the president has. Let's look at those departments a little bit here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Okay, now the first thing we need to learn is that these groups of departments are part of a group that we call the cabinet. Okay, everyone, let's say that word together. Cabinet.
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 Now, guys, I think we have cabinets somewhere in our house, don't we?
yeah,
Yeah.
Where?
in the back.
Maybe in the bathroom, maybe in the kitchen.
Bedroom, kitchen, yeah.
Yeah. Now, so I want to be clear here. We are not talking about the president's kitchen here, okay? So, guys, please understand, when we call the president's cabinet, what we mean is the group of people who basically give the president some helpful information, okay? So, Saba, would you like to read this next part for us?
Okay. The president's cabinet. The president makes important decisions every day. Advisors help the president make these decisions. The president what the
The
advisors
advisors.
because the advisors are called the president's cabinet. The cabinet members are in charge of different departments. For example, there is a Department of Education. The Secretary of Education advises the president about education and schools.
Okay, so
What
we'll
the-
stop there. Okay,
okay.
so again, as you will see, there are many departments in the president's cabinet. In fact, we're going to look at all of them here in just a moment. Now, on the interview, you only need to be able to mention 2 different cabinet positions. So, for example, if you said Secretary of Education, that would be one presidential advisor. That would be one member of the president's cabinet. Now, if you look at the picture here, here's a picture of President Reagan, President Ronald Reagan, talking to his advisors, his cabinets. So often you would hear in the news, the president is meeting with the president's cabinet. So maybe you're confused and thinking, why is it so important that the president is in the kitchen? And then you understand now, of course, that we're not talking about the kitchen. We're talking about these group of people, these people here, this group that gives advice. They help advise the president. So they give him advice in many, many different ways. Okay, so that's another important part of the interview, is to understand that the president, he is the leader. So again, the president here, like in this picture, President Reagan, he is the leader of all of the people at this table. But all of these people give advice. They talk to the president and talk about different things. Of course, it would be very difficult for the president to be able to pay attention to everything, right? That a lot of stuff going on in the United States. Okay, so we talked about the president's cabinet. Now, I'm going to read the next one real quickly. So again, as we mentioned before, this is an election year. So of course, we vote for president and vice president. So the question here is, how often do we vote for the president? How many years?
5.
After 4 years?
4 years, yes,
Okay.
after 4. So in this case, the president is, we elect a new president every 4 years. So as you can see, for example, in these little cards, 2016 was the last one, right? So the next one is going to be next month. And by the way, what month do we elect presidents? Take a look at the picture there. What month is that?
November?
It's November. Yeah, so next month, in about 30 days, right? Now it's less than 30 days. We are going to elect the president. Yeah, so there you go. Okay, so once again, the president serves 4-year terms. And just remember, here in the United States, we can elect a president 2 times, which means they can serve a total of 8 years. But that will depend on the election. So this year, of course, our current president is running again to be president. Okay, so let's talk about what happens next. Okay. So what happens next? All right, Elaine, would you like to read a little bit for us?
The president served for 4 years. After 4 years, the president can decide to run again. For example, President George W. Bush served for 4 years. Then he ran for president again, and he won.
And he won. Mm-hmm.
He won. He served it from 2001 to 2009.
Yes, and of course, the last president, President Obama, also served for 2 terms. Okay, but sometimes, some of you may know, sometimes the president cannot always serve. And as we know, in our history, sometimes a president might be killed in office or die. So sometimes the president cannot serve for 4 years. So, for example, if you look at the picture over here on the right side of the screen, you might recognize this picture here. For example, this person here, his name was Lyndon Johnson. And the person standing next to him, this is Jacqueline Kennedy. Some of you might remember in 1963, President Kennedy was killed.
Yeah.
In fact, he was killed pretty much right before Thanksgiving in 1963. Now, I was not alive in 1963, but my mother was. And she told me that Thanksgiving that year was very, very sad because the president died. So as you can see, this does not happen a lot, But when it does happen in the United States, then the question is, if the president cannot serve anymore, whether the president is sick or is, again, killed, who becomes the president?
The vice president.
Vice President.
Very good. Yeah, so for example, we mentioned President Kennedy was assassinated, was killed in 1963, and then Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, that's the man you see in the picture, he became president. Now, here in the United States, we do have what's called the chain of succession, which means if something happens to the president, then the vice president becomes president. But what happens if something happens to the vice president? Well, then we have the next person on the list who becomes president. By the way, does anybody know who that person is?
The House Speaker.
That's right, the Speaker of the House. Now, we'll review that information in just a moment. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But the truth is, there is a very, very long line of succession. If something happens to the president, then the vice president becomes president. If something happens to the vice president, then it becomes the Speaker of the House, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And then after the Speaker of the House, it becomes the next person, and so on. So as you can see, the United States has a very long list in case something should happen. But notice what it says here. This has never happened in American history. We have had some presidents die and the vice president became president, but the Speaker of the House has never become president. Okay, so that has never happened here.
I think that's because they separate them. They don't take them in the same car or like that because they are afraid
Right.
for them.
That is correct. In fact, you almost never see the president and the vice president together. So in this case, you are correct, Saba. That is correct. Okay. Okay, so we're going to come back to our presentation, and basically what we're going to do is answer a couple of questions as we go along, but also discuss some more information. So once again, the current president, I think most of you know, is President Donald Trump. So he is the current president until November, and then we will see if President Trump wins re-election or not. And the current vice president is Mike Pence. So everyone, let's say those names together. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
I think everybody can say that one, right? And now let's say the vice president. Mike Pence.
Mike
Pence.
There you go. Okay. Now just remember, guys, the election is next month, so these names could change. So just remember, if you're applying for citizenship soon, these names might change or they might not. So remember, it changes every 4 years. There are a lot of names on the citizenship test. Okay. So once again, who is in charge of the executive branch? Who is the leader of the executive branch? This is easy.
President.
Congratulations. The president is in charge of the executive branch. Okay. Now, we elect a president for how many years?
Four.
That's right.
8.
4 years for each term. Yes, and a maximum of 2 terms. So, but the answer, of course, is 4. But it could be more. Okay. All right. If the president can no longer serve, who becomes the president?
The vice president.
Vice president.
Correct. So the vice president becomes the president. Okay. Now, if the president and the vice president can no longer serve, who becomes the president?
Speaker of
Speaker
House.
of the House.
Speaker of the House. And remember, at this time, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. So keep in mind, that would be a strange situation where the president and vice president are Republicans, but you notice that Nancy Pelosi is a Democrat. So that would be very strange situation. Okay, guys, this one's easy. In what month do we vote for president?
In November.
Correct. And as Saba mentioned, it is coming up November 3rd. So actually, this is very, very early this year. Usually it's the second Tuesday that we see. So in this case, I'm sorry, not the second, but usually it's later than the 3rd.
Usually, I think it's 5 or like that.
Yes, usually it's a little bit later. So this is
Yeah.
definitely one of the early ones.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, who vetoes bills?
The
The
president.
President.
Correct. And remember, veto just means to say no, just to say no to the bills. Okay, now, what does the president's cabinet do? And don't say kitchen cups.
Make help the
Clearing.
president to
Advice.
Help,
Citizenship.
advice.
That's right. Gives advice, helps the president, advises the president.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of President Barack Obama with his cabinet. And now you notice all these people in here. These are not all members of the cabinet. Some of these are news reporters. So the cameras and things like that. Okay. Now, speaking of the cabinet, we'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay. So don't worry. We're going to look at the cabinet a little bit more carefully. All right. Here's another easy one. Who is the commander in chief?
The
The
president.
president.
That is correct. Okay, now let's talk about this question. So speaking of the cabinet, now I just want to take a moment. Again, if you've been studying the 100 questions, they do list all of the cabinet positions. Now, for the interview, you have to be able to mention two, just two. But what I want to do is real quickly to show you all of the different cabinet level positions. Okay. Now, everybody, you do not have to repeat this. So you don't need your microphones here, but I'm just going to say them very quickly just so you can hear them. Okay. So just listen. Okay. So just listen. So notice they all say secretary. Okay. So they all say secretary except for one, but let me go ahead and start. So we have Secretary of Labor, Education, Interior, Health and Human Services, State, Agriculture, Defense, Transportation, Homeland Security, Treasury, Veterans Affairs, Housing and Urban Development, Commerce, and Energy. Now, there are actually two other cabinet positions. One of them I've included here, which is the Attorney General. And believe it or not, the other person who's a member of the cabinet is the Vice President. But I would prefer that you choose two of the secretaries here on the screen. So again, my advice is choose the two easiest to say. So which two might be easiest for you to say? Secretary of what?
I think Secretary of Labor and
Labor
Education.
and Education. Yeah, so maybe Secretary of Labor and Education. That might be an easy one to say. Now, guys, if you really want to be amazing, you could try to memorize all of this list and then see if any Americans can answer this question. Because there are a lot of Americans who don't know all of the cabinet members.
I think for sure they don't know. but the immigrants,
Yeah.
I'm sure that the immigrant from the other country to America and they have citizenship. They know everything.
Well, they
America.
certainly have studied a little bit more than most
Yeah.
Americans, or at least it's been a long time since Americans have studied this. Now, guys, I'm going to tell you the truth. Before I started teaching this class, I didn't know all of them either. So I had to learn all of them. So it was still, that's the truth, right? So, but anyway, just say the easiest ones on the list. So again, maybe labor, education, maybe state. These are the easiest ones that you can say. Okay. But remember, you only need to mention two. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know that Morocco make a recognition of independence of America?
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
They signed a peace treaty in 1777.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the United States actually did have some conflict with some countries in Africa when they first became a country. But I didn't know that about Morocco. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, once again, guys, you just need two from this list. So my advice is just choose two easy ones. Okay. All right. Now, we have not talked a lot about the political parties, but I think you probably know the answer to this question. What political party does the president belong to? Do we know?
Republican? No?
Yes. Yes, that is correct. So now remember, that could change. You know, in the next election, it might be the Democratic Party. But for now, the current president is the Republican Party. Now, if you notice the picture here, it looks like an elephant. So I'm going to explain why we have an elephant here on the screen. In fact, look at this next question. What are the two major political parties in the United States? Well, we mentioned Republican. What's the other one?
Don't know. Elephant.
Democracy.
You're close, Elena. You're very close. Democratic Party.
Oh,
Democratic.
So everyone, let's say those again. Republican Party
yeah, elephant.
and Democratic
Democratic,
Party.
Democratic Party.
Yeah. Now, sometimes, so maybe Elena, maybe you're thinking of the word democracy, but notice when we spell the word democracy, we don't use a capital letter. So when we use the capital D for democratic, we're talking about the party. But when we use democracy, we use the little d. So in this case, maybe it's easy to confuse democracy and democratic. Now, if you look at these two pictures, you notice there's the elephant, which represents the Republican Party. And then the animal on the right side is what we call a donkey. A donkey. A donkey looks kind of like a horse, but it's not a horse, right? So the question is, students often want to know, because, again, they often see political advertisements. Why do we have donkeys and elephants representing our political parties? Well, I thought I would share this little history real quickly with you. You see, in the 1820s, the president of the United States was Andrew Jackson. So if you look at his picture is over here on the right side. Now, he was a Democrat. So he was a Democrat at the time. He was a member of the Democratic Party. And one of his political opponents did not like him. So he called him a donkey because he thought the president was very stubborn, you know, like he didn't agree. He kept trying and pushing and pushing. And of course, he said that the president was not very smart. So, but here's what's funny. He thought the word donkey was a bad word. But President Jackson, he actually thought it was a good nickname. And you might be surprised. Why? Why would you think that's a good nickname? Well, because President Jackson, he did not think he was necessarily like educated. You know, he did not go to university. But he believed that it was a good nickname because donkeys were hardworking. So President Jackson said, yes, I am a donkey. I work hard. So in this case, people began to connect the donkey with the Democratic Party, and that became more popular in the 1800s. Now, why the elephant for the Republican Party? Well, in the 1850s, this is true, the Republican Party was a new party. So in the late 1850s, the Republican Party first kind of began. So some of you know Abraham Lincoln. We're going to talk more about Abraham Lincoln next week. After the election of Abraham Lincoln and the end of the Civil War, which again we'll talk more about next week, the political party of the Republicans, they became the party in power. So in this case, people started calling the Republicans like elephants because the elephants were running over everything in their way. So basically, they had all the political power and they could do anything they wanted to. Now, the reason they used the word elephant, and then, of course, it became popular, was because of this cartoon here on the right side. You see this cartoon here with all these different animals? Well, if you notice, who's the biggest animal in the picture?
the lion.
No, take a look. Who's the animal? It's the elephant. See
It's
how
a dog,
everyone's
elephant.
everyone's scared of the elephant here because the elephant's just running through everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's because this cartoonist, his name was Thomas Nast. In 1874, he created a cartoon, and he called it the Republican vote. So if you look carefully at the elephant on his back, it says the Republican vote. That's because they could not be stopped. The Republicans were in power at the time, and nobody could stop them. So that's why the Republicans became the elephants. So now you know why we use those pictures of donkeys and elephants, right? It's not because they like zoos. It's because they compared these political parties to animals. So students always want to know, Mr. John, why? Why do they use these animals? Sabi, you have a question?
also mentioned that the elephant is very strong,
Yes.
and they made even donkey is afraid about from the elephants.
Well, maybe. Of course, the donkey is, remember, the donkey's not very smart, so the donkey might kick the elephant, right? It might try to kick the elephant. So in this case, elephants, yeah, are pretty big, but, donkeys, they can fight too. Okay, well, guys, we've got just a few minutes left. Now, fortunately, with the time we have remaining, the judicial branch part of our discussion is very short. And that's because there are not many questions in the interview about the judicial branch. So everyone, let's say that word together, judicial.
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 Okay, very good. So when we say judicial, what we mean are the courts. Okay, now not a basketball court, but the legal court that we have here in the United States. So let's talk a little bit about the court system here. So once again, in the judicial branch, they are that third branch, right? So we have executive, legislative, and then we have our final one, the judicial branch. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in here. All right, Shekna, are you available? Would you like to read this part for us?
Yes. Yes. Which one? I don't see it.
Okay, so do you see where it says the judicial branch?
Yes. 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 The
Judicial. Try it again, judicial.
to judicial
Good,
judicial branch in part of the United States government.
good.
The judicial branch is called the court system.
Very good.
There are different levels of court. The Supreme Court and the Highest Court, the United States. The court review law. The court explain law. The court decide if a law goes against the Constitution.
All right, very good, Shekna. So thank you. Thank you for reading that. So once again, when we talk about the judicial branch, we are referring to the courts. Now, obviously, there are many different levels of courts here in the United States. We have our local, like city court, right? So, for example, if you get a parking ticket, when you get a parking ticket, you don't go to Washington, D.C., right, to pay the ticket. No, you do it at the city level. Of course, we also have state courts, right? And then, of course, we have the federal courts. The federal courts is the court system, the court system of the United States. And of course, the most important and the highest court is the Supreme Court. Now, remember a couple of weeks ago, we mentioned the Constitution is the supreme law, right? Not the supreme pizza, the supreme law. So now we have the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is the number one highest court in the United States. Now, I know this can be confusing, but just try to understand. Every state also has their own Supreme Court. There is a Kentucky Supreme Court, an Ohio Supreme Court. But when people say the Supreme Court, they are talking about the United States Supreme Court. So the United States Supreme Court is the absolute top, the absolute most important. Okay? Now, what do the court systems do? Well, again, they review and explain those laws. Congress passes the laws. The court system helps explain and review them, okay? And from time to time, the court might decide if a law that is made by Congress or even by the states could be against the Constitution. So keep in mind, the judicial branch is a pretty strong branch. They get to decide which laws are constitutional or not. That's a pretty big, important role. Okay? Now, we will quickly move into this last part. So again, generally, when we talk about the Supreme Court, we generally refer to them not as judges, but we often call the members of the court justices. Everyone, let's say that word together, justices.
Justices.
So justices are those people that you see here in these pictures. They're wearing the black kind of robes, these long black robes that you see here. So, for example, the picture you see here, this is kind of an old picture here, but generally the Supreme Court has 9 justices. Now, please understand, please understand that the Constitution does not talk about how many members the Supreme Court should have. So again, the number 9 is kind of what everyone agrees to. But the truth is, it could be, you could have 13, you could have 20, but because the Constitution does not say. Of course, if you had more than 9, 12, 13, 14, that would be kind of difficult to have agreement, right? But in this case, those 9 justices, that's the answer they're looking for in the interview. So in this case, the answer would be that there are generally 9 members. Now, one justice is called the Chief Justice. Everyone, let's say that together. Chief Justice.
Chief Justice.
Now, you might remember the word, remember Commander-in-Chief? Remember we said the president is the Commander-in-Chief? Well, the word chief means like the top, right? The most important. Now, but I want to be clear, the Chief Justice is not necessarily like the most important or the number 1 justice. The Chief Justice is kind of like the organizer. He or she is the person who kind of gets the people together and they discuss things. But the Chief Justice is not like the president. He's not the president of the Supreme Court. But he does kind of have some authority or power when organizing the justices together. Now, what's interesting about the Supreme Court and many of the actually all of the federal court positions, is that the justices do not have a term limit. So notice what it says. They serve for life or until they retire. Now, some of you might remember a couple of weeks ago, one of our justices died.
Yeah, Ruth.
Yeah, so it was the second woman appointed to the Supreme Court, and that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah.
She's pictured here.
Yeah.
This is her here in this photo. So the problem is right now, the Supreme Court has only 8 members, okay? But remember, in the interview, you need to answer 9. That's generally the number we have. But in this case, they serve for life. So she died and she was still serving. We did have a retirement a couple of years ago. But again, it doesn't happen all the time. These people can serve for a very, very long time. In fact, right now we have one justice who's been serving since 1991. That's a long time. So keep in mind, they can serve for a long time. Okay. All right. Let's return to our presentation because our time is just about up. So let's go back and review a few things we've learned here about the judicial branch. So once again, what does the judicial branch do? Well, if you remember, they review and explain the laws.
Explain.
So they help review and explain. So you can say reviews laws, you can say explains laws. Okay. Now, once again, how many justices are on the Supreme Court? Now, not now, but normally, how many?
9.
9.
That is correct. And this picture that you see here is a more recent photo. This was the Supreme Court in 2019. So keep in mind now, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the woman you see here, she did die this year. So now there are 8.
87.
She was pretty old. And in fact, sometimes they can serve up into their late 80s. So as you can see, the court right now, this is what it looked like in 2019. But still, there are 9 justices normally. Okay. Now, we did not answer this question, so let's go ahead and introduce who is the current Chief Justice. So his name is John Roberts. Everyone, let's say that together. John Roberts.
John Roberts.
Yes. I know there are many names in the citizenship test, right? Lots of names. The name of your governor, the name of your senator, the president, the chief justice. There are a lot of names, okay? So that's why, guys, it's so important that you practice, 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 right?
Yeah.
Right, Mr. John?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I heard, Mr. John, that the President Trump wants to elect another woman.
Yeah. So,
Ruth.
well, we would say that he wants to nominate another woman for the Supreme Court. And right now, excuse me, right now, Saba, the question is, are they going to approve? Will the Senate approve the justice before the election? But in case if you've been listening to the news, 3 senators have become ill with COVID.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
I heard
problem
it.
is, yeah, right now they don't, excuse me, they don't know if they can meet. So that could be a problem for the president if he wants to appoint the other justice. So we'll see. Probably it's going to happen. So yes, there will be 9. But right now, guys, John Roberts is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Okay, guys, our time is up for today. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Now, in your email this week, I will send you the flashcard practice for all of the branches of government. So you'll get a chance to go back and review all of the 3 branches and all of the questions that they could ask you. And I'll also send to you the Constitution questions too, so you can practice with those again. Okay. And then I will also send you to keep you help you keep practicing for that writing part of the test. I will send you some writing quizzes. So just like the ones I sent you a few weeks ago, you can hear the sentence, practice typing it on your phone or on your computer to help you keep practicing with that spelling. Okay. Now you can use a piece of paper, but you have to still put it in. You still have to type it. So if you're using your phone, it might be a little more difficult. But the idea is, guys, you have to keep practicing. Keep practicing for the writing part of the test. And again, we will continue to do writing practice in our time together. Okay, guys, do I have any other questions before we finish here today?